Hey Marvel fans, and welcome back to the Symbiote Signal, decoding the MCU through patterns and logic. Today I want to talk about something that I think is quietly becoming one of the most important pieces of Avengers Doomsday, and that's Rogue. Not just the idea that Rogue might be back, but why Rogue makes sense right now, structurally, narratively, and emotionally, in a way that I don't think Marvel is doing by accident. Because when you step back and look at what the MCU is actually setting up, heading into Doomsday, Rogue doesn't feel like nostalgia. She feels like a solution. And to understand why, we have to zoom out and look at a pattern that Marvel uses over and over again. Marvel is in the middle of a very intentional reset of its power hierarchy. We've already seen Captain Marvel step back from the center of the board, and whether she retires, ascends, or simply exits the main narrative, that leaves a massive vacuum. Now look at what Marvel is doing right now. We just got Sentry, an Omega level character whose power is terrifying specifically because it's unstable. And just this morning, Marvel dropped a brand new Wonder Man trailer. Another Omega tier character, and again, notice the pattern. They're holding back, they're teasing power, they're showing potential, not full scale. That tells us something very important. Marvel isn't flooding the board with gods. They're carefully reintroducing what Omega level actually means. And here's a detail that really stood out to me. When Sentry's power starts leaking out, his eyes turn yellow, and in the Wonder Man footage, as his powers start to activate, his eyes turn purple. That's not random. Marvel is teaching the audience a visual language again. This is what Omega power coming online looks like. So where does Rogue fit into all of this? Rogue solves a problem Marvel has had for years. In the Fox X-Men films, Rogue never completed her arc. She was introduced as powerful, but burdened. She was defined by what she couldn't do, and she never got the version of herself that most people know, the flying powerhouse Rogue from the comics in the 90s cartoon. Marvel knows this. And here's the key. Captain Marvel's power set is exactly what completes Rogue's story. Flight, strength, confidence. Rogue isn't replacing Captain Marvel. She's inheriting the story function that Captain Marvel no longer needs to carry. And this also explains something else people have been asking. Why aren't Storm and an experienced Jean Grey on the Doomsday X-Men team? Because they broke the story. Storm plus an experienced Jean Grey collapses the tension immediately. Rogue, Gambit, Wolverine, Nightcrawler, that's an experienced but manageable team. And Rogue specifically gives Marvel a powerhouse without breaking the board. There's another reason Rogue matters. Gambit is gaining traction. Real traction. And Rogue is the natural long-term partner to keep around if Marvel wants that side of the X-Men to continue. If Wolverine is sticking around, and yeah, the joke is until he's 90, then Rogue sticking around actually makes a ton of sense. And this feels like a good moment to pause for a long box section. I didn't really overthink the comics tonight. I just reached back and grabbed what was right there on top of the pile. So let's see what we've got. First up, Spawn. And this actually ties directly into something I was talking about earlier. When I first saw Deadpool in Deadpool 2016, his face immediately reminded me of Spawn. Same exaggerated scarring, same grotesque expressions, same visual language. But it's not just visual, it's narrative too. Both characters are defined by the same tragedy. They can't go see the woman they love because of what their face has become. That's no coincidence. Deadpool was created by Fabian Nicieza and Rob Liefeld. Excuse the pronunciation if I didn't get it perfectly right. But visually, that DNA traces right back to Image Comics, and Todd McFarlane's influence is unmistakable. If Spawn were wearing Spider-Man's suit, they'd be almost the same character. Those contorted poses, that hyperdynamic anatomy, that is McFarlane. This isn't a traditional long box, but the classic ones don't fit on the shelf. And honestly, I think this looks cleaner and more professional on camera. This is one of those moments when I get a little nostalgic. When I was a kid, once in a while I could talk my grandmother into giving me $5, which doesn't sound like much now, but back then that was huge. And instead of buying new comics, sometimes I used to grab older ones, pre-90s, early 90s stuff. I actually found some of those recently, especially my Venom comics. They weren't the earliest Venom ever, but they were old to me when I was a kid, and that made them very special. What's funny is I actually had to borrow a couple of those Venom issues back recently because my daughter took a liking to them and put them up in her room, which gave me the chance to tell her why they were special in the first place. And that's kind of what this whole Carnage Venom thing is for me. These stories stick. And that's why the Carnage story matters so much to me. It wasn't just escalation, it was earned. This stuff is why I love comics. Visual language, legacy, patterns that carry forward. First up, I figured it's the holiday season. Happy New Year, by the way, to everyone. Here's our first comic. This is a special holiday edition, and these were the comics that you couldn't actually find in the comic store. But at the grocery store, you could definitely hit the moms or the grandmoms or whoever was with you at the time. And these were generally cheaper than your regular comics. They usually were about half the price of a regular comic, actually. And so I thought that was neat. They generally didn't have the best content in the world. In fact, when I was a kid, I kind of thought these were lame, and so did my friends, but I still got them at times when they seemed cool. So, I still considered them a collector's thing. I don't know. I still bought it. So, here you go. And moving on to the next comic, we got some Spidey action. Spidey's got a metal arm in this one. We've been hearing a lot about metal arms lately. We know Bucky has a metal arm, and there's a lot of talk going around right now that Thor is either going to die or lose an arm. And of course we know that in the comics he gets his metal arm made out of black Uru metal. Well, apparently Spidey gets an arm too. You get an arm, he gets an arm, everybody gets a metal arm, right? And in the next one we got Black Knight. Is that what his name is? I forget. But we do have this character in the MCU, and I very much like the actor that plays him as well. And I forget his name, so apologies to that, but I think he's a great actor. He's from Game of Thrones. I know him from that. I know he's a popular character in Game of Thrones. Not the biggest Game of Thrones fan, but what can you say? I'm at a loss. And before we get to these special Venom comics, let's show a few more X-Men and Avengers comics. Get out, we got some Wolvie. So, of course, I claim that Venom is my favorite character, but everybody's favorite character is Wolverine, right? It's almost like you have to have Wolverine as like a side favorite character. Does that make sense? It's almost like you're uncool if Wolverine is not your favorite character, so you have to throw that in there, Venom's my favorite character, but also Wolverine type of thing. And here's the next comic. I was a big Hulk fan growing up. This was actually one of those kind of current events. This wasn't actually a comic. This was more of an update on what's going on in comics. Thought that was kind of cool. It's got some good artwork on the cover. Love the 90s Hulk artwork. Great stuff. Oh, we are going to get into that later, because I don't know if I've mentioned yet, but actually I have another favorite comic book character. I got too many favorites, I guess. Are you allowed to have 3 favorites? If I'm allowed to have a third favorite character, it would definitely have to be Pitt. And Pitt was a very Hulk-like character. In fact, Pitt was basically if Hawk was Wolverine, something like that. We'll get to Pitt later though. I have a whole video coming on Image Comics and my favorite characters from them and how it relates to Marvel. Alright, we're almost at that older comic section. I did want to share, since we're being so nostalgic, that I do have the Superman's Dead comics. Of course, I was a kid when this happened. This was like the biggest thing ever. Everyone was talking about it. I thought it was going to be the biggest comic event in the history of comics. So of course I had to get a copy. But as I've stated before, DC is not my favorite. I do have some though. And now for those older comics. But first to start, I love What If comics, and we got some Punisher action coming soon in the next Spider-Man movie. So everybody, right, would be pumped if this happened, right? What if the Venom symbiote bonded with the Punisher? Oh, that would be crazy, bro, right? Would that be crazy? I think it would be. And to kick off our old Venom comics, these are very special. These are some of the most special comics there are. I will be very sure to return these to my daughter promptly. Next up, we got one of these older Venom comics, and check out this cover, guys. Look at that. Is that cool or what? Look who he's got there. He's got Peter's parents. Those are Peter's parents. And at this time, Peter's parents were alive. Say that 3 times fast. Peter picked a pickled pepper. Venom frequently went after Peter's family, and he often like injured and maimed them too. So we'll just throw that out there. But this is a great cover. Look at this, guys. Look at this, guys. This is amazing. This is why I love Venom. Here we go. Check out that cover. That's a cover. I'm not going to take a lot of these out of the plastic because some of these are older, and I haven't priced them or graded them or anything like that. But these are very special to me, so they have been kept in the plastic. I did take them out to read them when I was younger, but I have not taken them out for a very long time. And we got the next one. Check out that cover, guys. I'd have to open this one up to check the date on it, but that artwork looks either early 90s or pre-90s to me. Great cover. Great cover. Look at that Venom, guys. This is a particular Venom style. Look at this. This is an early Venom style, guys. Alright, now I got some very early Spidey comics. Right now we were just introduced to the Human Torch in MCU. What about Molten Man? That's an older cover there. Look at that, 25-cent issue. Pretty cool. I bought that in the 90s with my grandma's money. And here's the next one. Another older Spider-Man comic. You know, I wasn't a fan of the older artwork, but I still thought that it was cool, like super cool to get like the older looking comics. Somebody should have told younger me that the pricing didn't really work out so great later, but it's cool. And next up, one of my favorite characters. I keep talking about, I got too many favorite characters. Gladiator in some Fantastic Four comics. Check this out. Gladiator just punked like all of them, like all at once. Gladiator is kind of a beast. And next up, we got some more Gladiator and Fantastic Four. Got some Thor in this issue. Thor fights Gladiator. Gladiator is not in the MCU. Gladiator is a Superman-like character. So I doubt we will get him for quite a while, especially considering that we just got Sentry and that just this morning the Power Man trailer came out. And so we're getting Power Man as well. And so Captain Marvel might be retiring, but I still think that the slot is filled. What do you guys think? As much as I would love to see, check out some Gladiator, by the way. Gladiator is basically Yondu if Yondu was Superman and didn't have his awesome arrow. And is one more Gladiator Fantastic Four appearance. As you can tell, I'm a fan of Gladiator and the Fantastic Four. Let's get back to Rogue. Rogue isn't just returning, she's finishing a story Marvel knows is left incomplete. She fits the power vacuum. She fits the X-Men lineup. She fits the emotional moment the MCU is in right now. This isn't desperation, this is payoff. A lot of people are worried Marvel is just recycling old characters, but when Marvel gets it right, it doesn't feel like repetition, it feels like inheritance. And guys, we're going to be talking about what Marvel does over these next few years for the rest of our lives. I've already seen enough to know that. I'm Dave Lance, and this has been the Symbiote Signal, decoding the MCU through patterns and logic. I'll see you in the next one. Peace!